Okay, so is climate change for real? Is that the question?
Yes.
So almost all scientists in the world seem to think it's real. And I think I go by science, so I would say it's real. I think that where people get confused is when there's a distinction that's made between uncertainty and doubt, and most people don't see that difference. So when scientists tend to say things like there's a 95% certainty or a uncertainty band around around results, then people seem to think that it's not going to happen. And what scientists are doing is they're actually trying to talk in science language and not communicate in a layperson's language. And so I think that's a big problem, and really what they're doing is they're sowing some seeds of doubt when they do that in a way. When scientists speak in terms of uncertainty, for the general public that's confusing, and politicians and other people can use that and have tended to sow, I think, some seeds of doubt whether it's happening or not. So it is happening, it is real, it's just how fast it's happening and what the rate is, that's still to be determined. There are different models that tell you what kinds of things are happening. But I think it's that doubt that is sowed in the minds of people because of the language that's used. And it's very important to know that uncertainty bands around modeling is different. That is different from doubt. So there is no doubt that climate change is happening. It's just the rate and the when some of these things will arrive. So if you're talking about sea level rise, you don't know exactly how much by exactly when, but you do know it's happening already. So there are historical markers, there are trends that have shown that the Earth and the planet is warming, and that is causing some large systemic changes. That means your ocean currents are changing. That's going to change the way your storms affect the land. So, for example, in Hawaii, we've got, it's very rare that there will be hurricanes, that hurricanes make landfall in Hawaii, but the track of these hurricanes is changing because of climate change and because of ocean currents and because of the warming of the oceans and the warming of the air. So the tracks for hurricanes are actually coming to Hawaii, and it's quite likely that there will be more hurricanes hitting Hawaii itself in the future. And around the world, we're finding that storms are more...
To bring it as basic a level, as any common person can relate to. Like if I live in a village and I'm seeing more frequent landslides happening, am I able to relate it to climate change, or do I just see it as it rained too much this rainy season?
Right, that's a good question. Yeah. If a common citizen or the lay public, as an individual, you probably notice that there have been changes over your lifetime, say, even if your lifetime is 30 years or so. You'll notice that things have changed. There are fluctuations from year to year. So, like you said, for landslides, or the example I have is, so my husband and I, we got married in February in 1992, and we noticed that in Washington, D.C., the maple flowers were blooming, right? So every year we look for that around our anniversary, and we found that it's actually changed in time, that it's actually moved to almost a month later, and that the seasons are doing different things and plants are doing different things. So you might notice this, as the lay person might notice that this is something that's happening in their own garden. They may see that some particular flower that blooms every year, or fruit that fruits every year, is not doing that around the same time, that there's more than a few weeks difference. And when you see these changes, that's an evidence of climate change. If you see there are more landslides or more rainfall, that is an evidence of, or it can be an evidence of climate change. And sometimes it's just that, yeah, it's raining a little more. But we have noticed that there is just more, and it's more severe. So you might find periods of drought, so where the rain hasn't come, and then suddenly there's a lot of rain. And it didn't ever used to happen like that. It would be, you'd have a certain amount of rain every month, and it was quite predictable. And now it's fairly unpredictable. It isn't following the patterns. So I think for the layperson, that is something that they can see.
It isn't the polar bears that we are trying to save.
Mm-hmm.
It's humans we are trying to save. And if we don't take care, the grains that they have been cultivating would no longer grow. Cropping patterns would change. Yeah? Their lifestyles would change. It'll become colder. We'll have more floods. We'll have cloudbursts more frequently than we used to have. So, what the scientists possibly need to communicate to that common person is, there is a relationship. Even the stray incidents that we are seeing, is it possible to relate it to the big question of climate change?
That's not the problem with citizens taking climate action is not that we don't have enough information. The problem is that we haven't communicated that information. So that's really the bottleneck for the layperson.
Yeah.
Is how do you relate it to the layperson's terms? How do you relate it to your everyday life, and what does it mean for you? So it could mean, because it's not necessarily life-threatening at that time, so it's not just about disasters and landslides or storms where people die. It's also about just the sort of slow march of change, but it's not that slow because it's actually changing so fast that your crops cannot keep up with it.